This conference will now be recorded.
All right, so let's come back and let's see. So now we know what is a tenant, right? What is a tenant? What exactly do you mean by a tenant? It's a it's an ID. Yes, it's an ID. It's an ID given to you on the Azure cloud, or I can say it's a space that's on the Azure cloud using which you can log in using that something called as a tenant ID, and you can start working on Azure. And if you want to start working on Azure, you need what? A subscription. So subscription is like, let's say, a membership with Azure, wherein Azure will tell you, okay, fine, you are now eligible to go ahead and start creating resources. You can start go ahead and creating things and all that stuff. And we have also seen how do you add users into the subscription and sorry into the tenant, and how you can give them access over your subscription. And then yesterday we also saw what exactly a user gets when he's an owner and what he gets when he's a contributor, or what kind of a role he gets a contributor out here as such. So I'll make a statement out here. Let me know if that is right or wrong. I have a user called user1 who's got a, let's say, RBAC, or who's got a role called as a contributor on top of, let's say, the subscription out here. Now my question is that can this user go ahead and add another user?
Oh, sir.
No,
Is a
exactly.
contribute.
He's a contributor, so he will not have the access to go ahead and add another user out here as such. So as a contributor, you can do everything an owner can do apart from user management. You cannot go ahead and manage other users out there as such. So you cannot do the same thing out here as such out there. So that's what we did till yesterday out here. So that's what we have. See, we have a tenant, we have a subscription, and even a subscription. Sorry, even a subscription. Please, will have its own ID. That's what we saw. A subscription has its subscription ID. A tenant has a tenant ID. Where do you check the tenant ID, guys? Where should I check the tenant ID? Where should I go to check the tenant ID out here?
Active Directory.
Subscription, Active Directory, and inside Active Directory, I will get something called what? A tenant ID. Where should I check the subscription ID then? In subscriptions. So if I go into subscriptions, I will get my subscription ID out here, and also the role that I play as a part of this particular subscription out here as such. A tenant, I have a subscription. I have users also added as a part of my subscription. Is this sufficient? Now the question that I ask Azure is that, you know what, I did everything that you asked me. You asked me to create a tenant, I created a tenant. You asked me to create a subscription, I created a subscription. Now everything is a part of, let's say, my Azure portal. Can I now start going ahead and start using the Azure portal? Azure says yes, you can, provided you have one more thing. Provided you have one more thing called as a resource group. Resource group out here, which is the basic resource that you start creating on the Azure portal. Now I'm going into resource creation and I'm telling here a resource group is the smallest resource that you can actually go ahead and create on the Azure portal. And for you to create a resource group, you have to have a sorry, you have to have a subscription. And for you to have a subscription, you need to have a tenant. A resource group comes under a subscription out here as such. Very simple. If I have to compare it with our local system, okay, if I have to compare it, draw a comparison between our local computer so that you can understand, tenant is nothing but your operating system. You need a Windows operating system or a Windows 10, 11, whatever it is, to access your computer. After the operating system, you should also have some kind of a permission, meaning you are either the administrator or you are, let's say, a guest user, which means a user account to log in, which is your subscription in Azure. After you log in into your system, you want to store some files, you want to do something. What do you need in order to do this? You need a memory, or can I say you need a hard drive? You need a C drive, D drive, or something like that. Partitions. Resource group acts like a partition on the cloud. Or you can say resource group acts like a folder on the cloud. Let's say, you can have, in your system, you can have one folder for books, one folder for movies, the other folder for songs. You can divide all these things. In the same way, in the Azure cloud, you have multiple resources. You have a virtual machine, or you have some kind of a resource out here. Using resource groups, you can separate your resources, meaning under one subscription you can have not one, not two, but multiple resource groups. Can have multiple resource groups, just like you have folders in your, let's say, drive. You can have multiple folders in your drive out here as such. Same thing, you can have multiple resource groups as a part of your subscription out here. And if you just look at this, right, if you just look at the documentation and say what is resource group in Azure, that's what tells you. A resource group is a container that holds related resources to an Azure solution. This is nothing but a container or like a folder which holds things out here. And very importantly, for you to create a resource group, you need to have a subscription out here. And at any given point in time, one resource group can only attach to one subscription. You cannot have something like you have two subscription and one resource group is being shared between these two subscriptions. You cannot have a sharing. Same thing. You have a folder at any given point in time. One folder can only be sitting in one drive. You cannot have that same folder sitting in two different drives out there. Same thing in the case of resource groups as well, which means a subscription can have multiple resource groups, but a resource group at any given point in time should be only attached to one particular subscription out here as such. That is what is resource group, and that is what is our today's demo. In order to understand how to create a resource group, what are all the details that you need in order to create a resource group, and what happens after you create a resource group out here. Okay, let me put people on mute, guys. If you do not have, let's say, any question, please stay on mute. It'll disturb the class if you're not. So I'll just come down into my Azure portal, and this is my subscription. Sorry, this is my tenant. I have a tenant ID. This is my subscription. I have a subscription ID. And in order to create a resource group, yes, in order to create a resource group, just go here into the search and say resource groups. Either this, or you have these three horizontal lines here. Say portal menu, click on this one. You have what? Resource group. Or just go to your home page. You have resource groups. So anything you'll come to the same page. So you can use any method. I'll say resource groups. And as of now, if you see, I have all these resource groups out here. But when you click here, right, this entire page will be empty. It will tell there is no resource group. Do you want to create a resource group out here? And what you can do is that you can click on create. Say create. And now it's going to ask you a couple of details. This is what it's telling you very firstly. It's telling a container that holds resources that are related to an Azure solution. You can decide how do you want to allocate the resource groups and etc. And then you have a learn more button. If you click on this, right, it will take you to the Microsoft documentation telling what is a resource group, how can you add a resource group, and if you just scroll down, it will also give you documentations telling that, manage resource groups on the Azure portal, how do you add the resource group, how do you create a resource group, and all these things out here. So it will give you a very good documentation link as well. Please check this out. Before you create one, please click on learn more. Just go through the documentation out here and come back. And this is what I have. The very firstly, it's asking me for what? Subscription. Which subscription do you want this resource group to be created? Again, under one tenant, can I have multiple subscriptions? Yes. That's the
Sir,
reason you have a drop down here telling which subscription do you want to create this particular resource group as a part of. I'll say delete this out and I'll click on the drop down. In my case, I only have one subscription. That's the reason it's showing one subscription out here. When you come to an organization, they'll have multiple subscriptions and you can create a resource group as a part of any subscription out here. provided you have a role on top of a subscription. If you have a role, only then you'll be able to access the resource groups and all these things. So I'll say subscription, and it's asking me for the name of the resource group. I will just give a name telling it is, since this is the first resource group that we are creating, I'll say first RG, short form for a resource group out here as such. Now let's see. See, when you create a resource group on the cloud, right? See, this is all a cloud. You're creating a resource group on the cloud, which means that you will be occupying some space. Even if you create an empty folder in your system, it will occupy 1 KB or something like that. Very small space, right? Even in the cloud, when you start creating something known as a resource group, you will need some space on the, let's say you'll need some space on the cloud. Yes. And who's giving us the space right now? Azure. The Azure, let's say, portal is giving us the space. But again, the Azure portal is telling you, okay, fine, I'll give you the space. And for me to give you the space, coming back to the very first class, there is something known as a data center. And data center is nothing but a room that is full of servers. And these servers will give you some space, right? So I'll get in some server out here. So when you create a resource group, that resource group is technically created on a particular server. So on one physical server, you're occupying some space, very tiny space out here. Now Microsoft is saying, okay, fine, this is something that I'll help you with. This is something that I do. But can you tell me where do you want me to create this? Because Azure has data centers across the world. It has around 61, 62, or 64 data centers today as we speak. Now it's telling which part of, let's say, the world that you want this particular resource group to be created. So if you go back here, do you see what? A region. It's telling choose the Azure region that is right for you and your customers. Usually, the logic here is this, guys. Let's say I am creating this resource group for one of my client who's called Ola. Let's talk about Ola. That client wants to, let's say, later after we create resource groups, that client wants to create all the data and everything inside this particular resource group. The best purpose or the best logic is that the resource group or the region that you select should be close to your business. Meaning the business is operating in India. You can go ahead, say India. You have Central, South, and West India, three different data centers that is on the offer. So that's what it is telling you. Choose the Azure region that is right for you and your customers. But is this something that you decide? No. This is something that your client or a team called as an Azure architecture team decides. They'll tell you which is the region that you have to create. In my case, let's say I want to create it in India, and they'll say Central India out here. I'm going ahead and creating this particular resource group in a data center of Azure that is hosted in a region called Central India out here. Very importantly, I will ask a question to Microsoft that, you know what, Microsoft, I am creating this particular resource group in Central India. I'll say create this out, and after creating it, can I change the region? Microsoft will say, I'm sorry, you cannot do that. This is something that you cannot change after you have your resource created. You cannot change the region of a particular resource, or you cannot change the name. You cannot change the name out here. But can I migrate my resource group from one subscription to the other? Yes, this is something which you are allowed to do. You can migrate it, but you cannot change the name, nor you can change the location of a particular resource after it is created out here as such. Okay. Data transfer is possible. When you say data transfer, see again, your resource group doesn't hold any data. The resources holds data. We'll talk about that. The resource group is nothing but a folder. So it doesn't really hold anything. It's a logical grouping. That's it. It doesn't really hold anything out here. It's just a folder for you. So the concept of data transfer really doesn't come into or really doesn't apply for a resource group at all. Okay, so now I'm going ahead creating something known as a resource group under a subscription. and that particular resource group is created in, let's say, something, a region called as Central India. Now we have already established a fact that you can have multiple resource groups under the same subscription. You can have multiple, which means that when you start working in a real-time environment, right, you will have thousands of resource group, guys. Not one, not two, thousands of resource groups out here. So let's go back again, back to home. I'm not creating it right now. I'll say home. And in my case, if you see, I have so many resource groups that I created. 4 resource groups are already as a part of this particular, let's say, subscription. And now if I were to ask you that, you know what, you have created thousands of resource groups. Okay, okay. You created thousands of resource groups out here. And the logic here is that for each and every team, you have created one resource group. Let's say for development team, you created a resource group. For QA team, you created one resource group. For a DevOps team, you created one resource group out here as such. And the point here my organization is asking me is that after I create thousands of resource groups, they're coming back and telling me that, can you tell me which team is using which resource group? Sorry, the question. Yes. So at the end, when you basically go ahead and start working in an organization, you will have not one, not two, but multiple resource groups out here. Let's say you have created one resource group for a team called development, one resource group for a team called QA, one resource group for a team called DevOps. The name you have given is first RG, second RG, third RG. This is the name that you have given. Now your organization is coming down and telling, can you tell me which team is using the first RG? Can you tell me which team is using the second RG? Can you tell me which team is using the third RG? Can you tell by this? After, let's say, 6 months, they are coming back and telling you, you will not even remember, right, which team is using what. It's very difficult to identify which team is using which resource group and what is the purpose of a resource group out here. That's the reason when you create a resource group, when you say create a resource group, let's go there again. I'll say first RG. I'll say location is Central India. I have something called as tags. Tags are for identification purpose. These are key value pairs. That's what it is telling you. Each and every section, right, will have some amount of documentation out here. Apply tags to your Azure resources to logically categorize them or logically organize them by categories. Again, it's telling a tag contains a key and a value pair. Key value or name value pair out here. I can do something like this. I can say team name value development. I can give multiple tags out here. I can say owner is developer @ Microsoft.com, the owner's ID. You can also go ahead and say the owner's number, phone number, and etc. Just in case at a later point in time, if your organization wants to contact them, they can just go ahead and understand, okay, fine, which resource group now belongs to what. Simple. Tags are for identification purpose. Even when you go for shopping, right, each and every, let's say, product will have a tag for identifying it. And finally, after I give the basics, and in the basics, what I said, the subscription, the name, the region. In the tags, I gave two different tags out here. There is no limit. You can give any number of tags out here as such. In my case, I just gave two tags. And I'll say finally, review and create. This is like the final page, which is telling you that, you know what, these are all something that you're creating. Are you sure about this? Telling that subscription is Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. Resource group name is first RG. Location is Central India. Team or the tags here is what? Team name. Again, I did not give any ME name out here. I'll just correct that. And here, if you see team name and the owner out here, are you okay to do it? Are you okay to go ahead and create it? I'll say yes. I'll say create. It will take one quick second, and it now created what? A resource group called first RG. Let's also now go ahead and create a resource group called second RG for a team called QA. So I'll say create. I'll say second RG. I'll say again Central India. I'll say next tags. I'll say again, if you see now right now, right, the tags are now loading up right now. I'll say team name is QA, owner is QA@Microsoft.com. I can say review and create out here as such. So now I have first RG, now second RG. Let me go ahead and create one more RG out here, third RG. I'll say third RG. So one thumb rule that you have to follow, guys, is that when you are creating a resource groups in your subscription, the names of the resource group must be unique. Meaning I cannot reuse something like this. I cannot say add. I cannot say first RG. What does it say? This particular resource group does not already exist in the same subscription out here. So you cannot again create it. Simple. You have a folder in your drive. You're trying to create again another folder with the same name. My Windows will simply tell you that you know what, you have two different folders. You cannot have like this. I cannot create it. So the thumb rule here is that the name of the resource group within a given subscription should be unique. So I'll say this third RG and I'll give a location like Central India again. I'll say tags. I'll say the owner here is DevOps @Microsoft.com. And I'll say team name is DevOps. I'll say review and create this out here. And I'll say create.
Tags are reusable. Hmm? Tags
I'm
are
sorry, can you
reusable.
come on? Tags are
Tags are
usable. Yes. Yes. Tags are usable. You can have any kind of tags out here. And the reason I'm telling you need to have a tag is because of this. Now you have so many resource groups. Now I'm coming back and asking you, can you tell me which resource group that you created for a team called development team with an owner called developer@gmail or developer@microsoft.com? See, now you'll be able to identify that yes, it is first RG. Reason being, I just created it. If I come back and ask you after 6 months, will you be able to tell it? Probably not. A little difficult. That's the reason you have something called a filter, a search filter. You can say add a filter. You can say tags. In the tag you see team name is equal to, I can say development, and you can say apply the filter. You'll be able to now filter it out. So an efficient way in order to, let's say, go ahead, exactly, you'll be able to filter it out and you'll be able to say that you know what, the team name basically is a development, and with the development team you can just filter out what are all the resource groups that they have out here as such. So this is an efficient way to go ahead and filter your resources out here as such. Yes, I'll take a quick pause. I'll just take 1 quick minute out here. Let's see. Okay, what is the value field in the resource group? What is the value field in the resource group? Okay, where did you see something called as a value field? This one, it's a key value pair. So team and the name of, let's say, or the name of that particular value out here as such. Yes, any questions still here? I'll take a quick pause. Any questions still here? So we have now a tenant. Under a tenant, you can have multiple subscriptions. So you can have literally multiple subscriptions under the same tenant out here. Let me put this out clearly. And under a subscription, now we have what? A resource group. And under each subscription, you can also have what? Multiple resource groups, just like the way we have first, second, and third. So now this is the hierarchy. Under a subscription, under a tenant, I have a subscription. Under a subscription, I can have multiple resource groups out here as such. So now I have three different resource groups. One for something called development, the other for QA, the other for DevOps. Let's see now. Let's come back to our user section. So yesterday we were doing users. Now let's see. I have three users called user 1, user 2, and user 3. Finally, user 3 out here as such. User 1 is a developer, user 2 is a QA, user 3 is a DevOps. Now my point, or my let's say idea, is that user 1 should only have the access to the first resource group. User 2 should only have the access to the second resource group. Users 3 should only have the access to the third resource group out here. So let's see. Firstly, how do we create a user called a user 1? Let's come from that particular basic. How do you create a user called user 1 out here? From Active Directory, you need to go into the Active Directory. You need to say users. You need to say create a user. Let's do that. Go into the Active Directory. I'll say users. And already I have user 1 and all that stuff. So what I'll do is I'll just delete them out. So I'll select demo user 1, demo user 2 and just delete this out. So let me wait for a second and let's, yeah. So these users are deleted. I'll recreate them back again. Not a problem. I'll say create a new user. And in here, I'll say this is user 1. Okay, it's telling user 1 already exists in the directory. It will take some time to go away. So let's do one thing. Let's say rg user 1. Let's call him as rg user 1 out here. I'll say this is user 1. This is user 1. Password. I'll just go ahead and give a password here. And I'll just go ahead and say create this particular user. After I create, what should I do, guys, in order for this user? Now, where is this user created? In the tenant. And after that, what should I do?
Again,
Subscription. I'll have to give what? IAM or access management or role based access control. Now, what I'll do, I will go as an administrator into my subscription and let me go ahead and add this user. Say add role assignment, and I'll give this user a role called a contributor. I'll say next. I'll just select. I'll search for user 1 or RG user 1. Sorry, RG user 1. This is the user 1, RG user 1 out here. I'll say select. I'll say next. I'll say review and assign. Where did I assign the role here, guys? At the subscription. So at the subscription, the user 1 is what? A contributor. This is what is the user. Let me go back. Let me get the user ID. So if I go into the users, go into, let's say, this particular user called user 1, I will have something known as a user ID out here. I'll copy this out. I'll go into a different browser or a new incognito window. I'll say portal.azure.com, give the user ID, say next. I will say give the password, the initial password out here. It'll ask me to update the password. I'll do that. I'll say next, updated the password out here. I'll say skip for 14 days out here. I'll skip this out. I'll say no. And let's go inside the user ID out here. So maybe later. Now let's go into the Active Directory. I am a part of the same Active Directory as my administrator is. I should also have access to the subscription. Yes. Now my question is that if I log in as a demo, as let's say this RG user 1, what are all the resource groups that I should see? What do you think are all the resource groups that I will have access to? Okay, so we need to give access to the resource group as a contributor. Okay, one answer is that we need to go into the resource group, give access as a contributor. Anyone else? What do you think will, or if I log in as that particular RG user 1, if I go ahead and click on, let's say, resource groups, I can go ahead and search for resource groups. What do you think are all the resource groups will I have the access? Or do you think I will have the access to the resource group in the first place?
no.
No, you shouldn't have access. Let's see that. So click here. I will just scroll down. I'll look for what? Resource groups. I see all the resource groups like my administrator does. Very important. Just remember this. If you assign a contributor role at a subscription level, all the children or all the child resources under the subscription will inherit the same permissions. This is called inheritance. Meaning, if I add a user at a subscription and give him a role, the same role will get reflected at RG1, RG2, RG3, and all the other RGs that are there as a part of this particular subscription. This user is going to inherit those permissions that are there on the subscription level, which means that you do not have to explicitly go ahead and give permissions on a resource group. I don't have to do RG1, I don't have to do RG2, I don't have to do RG3. I don't have to do this. As in when I'm added into the subscription, I'll have access to all the resource groups that are a part of my subscription out here as such. But is this what I wanted? I only wanted the user one to be a part of what? Resource group one. So what I'll do again is I realize that later and I say, you know what? Then in that case, the user should not even be added in it's at the subscription out here. Because if you add him at the subscription, what is he having? Access to all the resource groups under the subscription. I don't want that. So what I'll do is I'll remove the user from the subscription. Can I remove the user from a subscription as an administrator? Yes, I can do that. How do I do that? Go into the subscription again and using IAM, I added the user. Using IAM, I can remove the user as well. I can say go ahead here and I'll say role assignments and I will search for that particular user called RG user 1. See RG user 1. I can click here. I can say remove. Now it's telling removing this particular role assignment out here. And now I have what? That user was removed out here as such. Now, if I go back and log in as that user, okay, let me close this out. Okay, let me close this out as well. Yes. If I go back as this particular user, it will take about 2 or 3 minutes of time, guys. If I refresh this a couple of times, no access. Reason being my access was removed and it'll take some time to this or for this view to get reflected. It'll vanish completely. I will not have access onto the subscription at all in the first place. Again, your browser cache and all these things will play some role out here. It'll take some time for this particular thing to vanish. But again, if you click on a resource group, this is what you'll get. After 5 or 6 minutes, if you log in into the portal, right, as an RG user one, this RG user will not even be able to see any resource groups at all. He will not even be able to see a subscription at all. So I'll just log out and sign in back once again. I'll say forget this out. I'll close the window and reopen this once again. And I'll log in like that particular user. So I'll just go ahead. I have the ID copied already, pasted it out. And I'll try to log in inside this one. And let's see. If I go into resource group, what it is telling me, welcome to Azure. I don't have any role at all. I'll say subscriptions, none subscriptions because I was just removed from that particular subscription. And as and when I logged out and logged in, the second I was removed, I came back to this particular portal. I clicked on resource groups. It says no access. You don't have any access and all that stuff. And once I logged out and logged in back again, I don't have the access to the subscription. Now tell me what should I do? I don't want to add the user at the subscription. Reason being, he's getting access to what? all the resources or all the resource groups under this particular subscription. Then I only want the user to have a role based access control at this particular resource group level. I'll ask Microsoft that, what, is this possible? Microsoft will say yes, why not? It is possible. If you want to give access to an individual resource group, log in as your administrator account, go into resource groups, select the resource group that you want to add this particular user into. Click on this one, and in the left hand side of the resource groups, do you see something called IAM again? Which means that you can not only add users at the subscription level, you can also add the users at the resource group level out here. So now I'll go here and I'll say IAM. I'll say add a role. Same thing, add role assignment. I will say contributor. I'll say next. I'll say select members, and I'll select that member called what? RG1 user. Okay. RG user 1, right? Yes. RG user 1. Yes. RG user 1. I'll say select. I'll say next. I'll say review and assign out here as such. Now where am I assigning the role here? At a resource group level out here as such. I'm not assigning the role at a subscription level. I'm assigning the role at a resource group level. Now if I go back, is this particular user. Now sometimes for this roles to get reflected, right, you'll have to do a sign out, sign in. But now if you see, you're again able to see the subscription. And let me go into the resource groups. It's telling an error occurred and all that stuff. The roles are getting, let's say, they're getting assigned right now. It'll take about a minute or so. And after some time, you can refresh your browser and all that stuff. It'll act a little weird initially. I can also sign out and sign in back again. So again, if you assign like about 5 minutes to get reflected, and once after 5 minutes, you can check this out. And let me go inside this, let's say, portal. Let's say skip. Let's say no. Now what? Only the first RG. As the RG user 1, I'm only able to see the first RG, but with the administrator account, I am able to see what? All the resource groups out here. This is how you can establish a control on which user needs to be a part of which resource group out here and what role he needs out there as such. Yes, any questions still here?
Kiran,
Yes,
like, can I give a multiple roles to a single user? Is that possible?
very good question. Can I give multiple roles to a single user? Yes, it is possible. I'll also show you that. We'll also talk about that. That's the next concept that I'm going into. We'll also talk
And
about that on what happens. Yeah.
on what priority it will take that role
Yes, we'll talk
assignment?
about it. We'll
Okay,
talk
sure.
about it.
Thank
We'll talk
you.
about how multiple roles and what will really happen out here as such.
Yeah,
Yes, I'll
thanks.
just take a question offline. I'll move to that concept. Yes. Yes, at the subscription level, we are looking at all the resource groups. Okay. Yes. Yes. What is the difference? The difference is that where you have added the user. If you added the user at the subscription level, it's very simple. Let's say you have a folder in your computer. You have access to that particular folder in your computer. Inside that, there are 100 folders. If you click on that folder, will you be able to see all the 100 folders? Yes. But let's say in the second scenario, you have one folder. Inside that folder, you have 100 folders out here. But you only have access to one folder out there. If you click on that, what will you see? Only one folder. Same thing applies here. It depends where the user is added. In my case, the user is not added at the subscription. The user is added at the resource group level out here as such. Yes, one of the other questions is that can a user, let's say in our case user 1, have multiple permissions or multiple roles? If that happens, then what is, let's say, or how will Azure really treat it? For which I'll ask you a simple question. Let's see, the user one has what kind of a role? Contributor. Where does he have that role? Is it at the subscription level or is it at the resource group level? It's a resource group level. I'll take the same user and I'll re-add him into my subscription as a reader. Now I'm adding him as a reader. Now tell me, what do you think will happen? As this particular user, will I be able to see all the resource groups? Yes. Yes,
Yes,
that's
sir.
right. You'll be able to see all the resource groups. But what will happen to this permission? Will I
But
still
it
be a
cannot.
contributor in the resource group one, or will this be overridden? Overridden, let's check that out. Let's go there and let's come into our resource groups. And as an administrator, I'm going into the subscription again, going into what? The subscription level, saying access control, and I'll add a role. I'll say role assignment, and in here I'll say, let's say reader to what? That particular user called what? RG user one. Let's select. I'll say next. I'll say review and assign. I'm now adding a role for that particular user one as a reader on my subscription, and he already had a contributor and the resource group one out here, right? So let's close this out. And again, for the role to get reflected, it'll take some time, of course. So I'll again try to skip this out and go inside this. I'll just log out and relog in once again, because my browser cache and all these things comes into picture, and those will affect me.
Meanwhile, can I ask a question, Kiran?
Just a second. I'll just take the questions out there. Just give me one quick second out here and let's complete this. I'm into the portal. I am able to see, sorry, I'm able to see all the resource groups, one, two, everything. I'm able to see this, but come down to second RG. And if I try to create something here, okay, we'll see what are resources, how to create it. But let's say I want to create something. So as this user, I'm trying to, let's say make a change. And let's say I want to create a service called web app or something like this. There is a service called app service or a web app or something like that. I'll try to create it. We'll talk about what is the service and etc. But let's say that I'm trying to create. What is it telling me right now? Because I'm a reader. Exactly. I'm a reader. How do I know I'm a reader? I'll say access control. I'll say view my access. And now, what is the role? Reader. From where is it coming? Inherited. Meaning you automatically got this particular role out here. Let me go into the first RG. First RG earlier, what role that I had? Contributor. I'll again go into access control and I'll say view my access. What I have right now, both contributor and a reader. Now let's see the same thing. I'll go here, I'll say create. I'll again say web app and I'll say create this out. Is it throwing the error now? No, I don't have the error. But if I switch my resource group, I have the error, which means I am still a contributor on the first resource group out here. The permission is not overridden. Azure works on something called as an additive model. The permissions of Azure is called as an additive model out here. Which was group? Sorry, I didn't get you. Can you come again, please? No, it's not. It's called as an additive model. That's what I was telling. Is that if you have multiple roles, say role one or say contributor plus a reader, or contributor and a reader. In my case, user one has this role. Azure will say, okay, fine. Let me add both the roles. Let me see what I get with contributor plus a reader. Now, as a contributor, I'm also a reader and I also can do read and write. As a reader, I only have a read. Now it's telling you contributor plus a reader. The highest role is what? Contributor. So I'll give you contributor only. This permission is not overridden. I am still a contributor and I can make changes out here. That's what Azure tells you. Multiple RBACs in Azure. Just type in multiple RBACs in Azure. And this is what it tells you. What can I do? Let's scroll down. And this is what it tells you. Just scroll down, scroll down, and scroll down. Groups, multiple role assignments out here. It's telling you, so what happens if you have multiple overlapping role assignments in Azure? It's telling Azure RBAC is an additive model. So your effective permission is a sum of your role assignments. Whatever the role that you have is a sum of your role assignments. And then it's telling you, consider the following example. User is granted a contributor role at a subscription and a reader role at a resource group level. The sum of contributor and a reader effectively is what? A contributor role at the subscription level. Therefore, in this case, the reader role has no impact out here as such. It's an additive model in which Azure really works out here as such. Yes, I'm good to take questions now.
So
Anyone?
Kiran,
Any questions?
actually,
Good, please.
in which scenario we will create the user in the subscription level, and in which scenario we will create the user in the resource.
Yes, that's correct. If the user wants a reader access to all the, let's say, resource groups and also a contributor access at one particular resource group, then you go ahead, add the user as a reader, then give him a contributor role at an individual, let's say, resource group level out here as such. Yes, someone else had a question. Yes.
An additive model means
Just a
role
second.
will be applicable, right?
Sorry. Basa, just a second. I'll just come down. Just a second. Just taking a question offline. Yes. Once you create a resource group, can you modify it? What property of a resource group you want to modify? Very importantly. No, you cannot. Location, you cannot. Can you modify the tags? Yes, you can modify the tags. For example, you created a resource group. And here, do you see the tags? I can say edit. I can go ahead and let's say add multiple tags out here. I can delete the tags out here. But I don't have anywhere that I can change the name or the region. It's very important out there as such. Deleting, if you raise a ticket also, no, you cannot do it. You simply have to delete and recreate it. Can you delete it? Yes, you can delete it. How can you delete it? Delete resource group. Click on this one. It's asking you type in the name of the resource group. Just type in first RG and hit the delete button out here as such. Everything will get deleted. Everything will get deleted. You cannot transfer it. Everything will get deleted out here as such.
It's a kind of cascade. Kiran. If the higher level will be deleted, all the lower childs will also be deleted.
Just a second. I'll just come down. I was just taking a question offline. I'll just complete that and come down to the online class out here. Just a second. Yes, go ahead, please. You can ask in Telugu, not a problem. Good question is that if I delete a resource group, can I recover the data that is there in the resource group? No, you cannot do that. Deletion of a resource group is undoable, meaning you cannot go back in time, and that's what it tells you. You know, if you say delete resource group, right? Warning: resource group is what? Irreversible. The action about your take is undone. Going further, deleting the resource group, all the resources in it will be deleted permanently. You cannot restore it back at all. So it has to be very carefully done out here as such. Okay. I'll come down to the I'm coming down to the online class. I'll just take some questions on the online and come back to the offline questions to address the questions. Yes, go ahead, please. Someone had a question. I think Basha, you had a question firstly, so I'll just address that and then come back to Ramakrishna. Basha, if you're talking, I'm not able to hear you out.
Yeah,
Can you please?
like you said, like it role will be applicable, right?
Correct. It's an additive rule. Correct.
And if any organization having more than one share one resource group, is there any other possibility?
No, I'm sorry. Your voice is a little breaking. I'm not able to follow your question. Can you please come again, please?
Yeah, three or four subscription and resource
Hmm.
group in one subscription, and
Okay.
they wanted to share that resource group to any other subscription possibility.
No, not possible. You cannot share a resource group between. Yes, it's only one subscription. A resource group can only be attached to one subscription out there.
Okay, and resource group can be migrated to any other location. If we created in India and we wanted to migrate to UK, is then possible?
No, the name, the location, they cannot be changed. Subscription, yes, it can be changed. For example, second resource group is a part of a subscription called what? Let's say something like a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. Again, the move also is, let's say now, let's say disabled. If you say move, you can say what is the target subscription. In my case, I only have one subscription out here. If you have another subscription, you can change it, but you cannot change the location, nor you cannot change the name. That's how the product is designed.
Kiran, if we migrated to any other subscription means that location also will be changed.
No, not really. It will just get created in the central India location and the other subscription out there. The location will not get changed.
Okay.
Location is a resource specific out here. Yes, any more questions here? I think Ramakrishna, you had a
Yeah,
question. I'll take it.
yeah, Kiran. So actually, I asked it last time. So in which scenario, real-time scenario, we can create the user at resource group, and in which scenario we will go with the subscription. That is one. And second one is like, suppose, in my resource group, I have 100 plus users created. Now I want
Okay.
to delete the resource group. Before deleting the resource group, I want to migrate all the 100 users into different another user group. Is there
Okay.
a shortcut to migrate, transfer all those users before deleting the resource group to another resource group?
See, again,
Yes.
if you delete a resource group, users are not deleted. Users are a part of your tenant. Users are, let's say, a part of your tenant out here. For example, I have deleted a resource group called resource group 1, first RG. Will that delete my user? No, not really. Because my user is sitting as a part of my tenant out here. Until and unless I come here and delete him here, that's when the user will actually get deleted. But is there a way to migrate the roles? Yes, there is a way to migrate the roles. You can go and write a PowerShell script. That's the easiest shortcut that you have. You can write a PowerShell or a Bash scripting or a .NET script in order to transfer the roles for that particular user from one resource group to the other out here as such.
And also, like, can we can we deploy or migrate from lower environments to upper environments, like, QA and dev, this resource group? Can we
When
migrate?
you say migrate, what exactly do you want to migrate out there?
So I have a resource group with 100 or 500 users, and those users, if already present, like, that user group is present in dev. Now, instead of creating, I can migrate that to the QA environment. I don't want to create, but I just wanted to migrate, deploy that in the QA.
No, we are not creating again. We are adding them inside the second resource group out here. If that's not really migration, it's an addition. It's not a creation again. The user is already present. I'm not creating the user. I'm just giving the role for that particular user into a second resource group out there as such.
But we have, like, dev environment, UAT environment, and prod environment, right?
Okay. Okay.
That is different, right, Kiran? So I have
Environments are
created,
different. Hmm?
yeah, so I
Good,
have
please.
created in the dev environment. Now I don't want
Okay.
to do the redevelopment. I have created in dev environment all the user
Hmm.
groups. Now
Okay.
I want to deploy that resource groups into the UAT environment without creating again the same process. Is that
Yes.
possible?
Yes. Yeah, I get your question. Yes, it is possible. Again, that's achieved through automation. if you want to do something like that. I understand the question. Yes, that is achieved through automation out there. We look in that in the automation section out there as such.
Okay. Okay. So there is a possibility to deploy that, right? Like similar
Definitely.
way, how we deploy our code in multiple environments. Similar.
Exactly. Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I'll just take a question offline. Yes, go ahead, please. Okay. Okay, and the thing here is that the question here is that I am a client who has multiple regions. I want to create the same resource group in multiple regions out there. You cannot do that. You have to, let's say, change the name of your resource group and then create it in a different region out there as such. Because in a subscription, you cannot have the same resource group with the same name twice. So you'll have to change the name of the resource group and create it in another region out there as such. Yes, any more questions here?
Kiran, can I get the access to different
I'm
resource
sorry.
groups?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you come again, please?
Can I get the access in between the different resource groups?
Can I get the access to different resource group? Yes. If you are added, you can get the access to different resource groups out there.
The same user I have to add in the like
Yes,
dev one QA and
that's right. If you want that user to have, or if you want that user to have access on all the resource groups, just add him to the subscription.
okay.
Just
All
asking
right.
curious question. Curious, I'm asking this question. Like in the real time, how will this like dev and UAT and production, how will it will look like? Like now you are logging with like portal.azure.com.
Okay.
So in the real time, how will we log into the dev environment? How will we log into the QA or prod environment?
We
How
don't
will
log into a particular environment. We just log into portal.azure.com, and depending upon your access, you'll be able to see your dev environments or a QA environment out here. It's the same portal.azure.com. I don't log into an environment, I log into an Azure subscription. And depending upon what kind of a subscription you have access to, you'll be able to see those particular resources out there as such. So
like
again,
subscription?
if you are, yeah, good, please.
Subscription means like it's a dev UAT prod that environments we have
Can
like
be. It can be. Yes, it can definitely be.
the
It can be
subscription.
a dev subscription, or it can be a QA subscription, production subscription, UAT, staging. It can be that.
Okay. We don't have like similar like servers, dev repository, dev server, QA
No,
server,
you don't
not
have
like
like that.
that.
Not like that.
Subscription.
Subscription itself is an isolation out there as such.
Oh, okay.
All right, so that's it from my end, guys. I'm a little top of the hour right now. I'll just talk about that. I'll have to park that question. I'll take that tomorrow because now there's another class that is waiting right now. So I'll take questions again. I'll have to cut it by 9:05. Okay. So we'll take more questions tomorrow. I'll park these out. We'll take more questions tomorrow out there. Until then, have a good day ahead. Thank you.